Good afternoon. For the cards and readers portion, we're going to go over the basics and how they work. We'll talk about credential floor mats, and then we'll do a reader review and talk about compatibility, and then we'll also talk about some tools and resources that are available to you. So Prox cards, how many of you guys use Prox cards today in your facilities or install them? Oh, good portion of you. Prox cards are great technology used for access control, and they provide a very good level of convenience. Up until recently in the US, they were the go-to credential for access control, but that's changing a bit, and we're going to talk about that a bit today. In the United States, proximity technology, which when I say proximity technology, that just means exactly that. We bring the card in proximity to the reader, and it will read what's on the card. But proximity technology took about 85% of the market in the United States up until recently of contactless technologies, the other portion being smart cards. That's not true globally, though. Globally, we see a significant difference. Both in Europe and Asia, the dominant credential tends to be smart cards. They kind of skipped over the whole proximity thing and went straight to smart cards. In the United States, part of the slow growth of smart cards was due to the cost of the cards. Up until recently, up until about the last year or so, the cost of a smart card was significantly higher than a Prox card. But in the last couple of years, those prices have come down to the point that an entry-level smart card can be purchased for about the same price as a Prox card. So there's advantages to that we're going to talk about in a couple minutes as well. So you've got the fact that now it's affordable, smart cards are affordable, and also people finally figured out what to do with smart cards other than access control. It was obvious that much like a Prox card, you would use a smart card in access control, but what else would you do with it? The idea behind a smart card is that you can do more than access control with it, but nobody really knew what to do with it. So much like a smartphone 5 years ago, nobody really knew what to do with them, right? Oh, that's kind of cool, maybe I'll try it. But then people started writing applications for smartphones. And now today you can go to app stores, whether it's a BlackBerry or an iPhone, and download all kinds of applications to do on your smartphone. Smart cards are kind of similar in that 5-10 years ago, nobody really knew what to do with smart cards. And now you can buy applications through a bunch of our partners and other people's partners to do different things on your card. So we're seeing the popularity of smart cards grow significantly. For your reference up here, Schlage manufactures proximity cards and Prox readers that are compatible with HID products. We've put together a little bit of a cross-reference on the smart cards here. For example, the 1326 from HID is probably the most common Prox card that most people order. Our corresponding part number is the 7410. So it's essentially a HID compatible card that you could replace your HID cards with. And then this just gives you a cross-reference of all the different cards that we have that are HID compatible. We also have one for readers that is available. So how are the different cards constructed? Essentially, a smart card and a Prox card are the same thing from a construction standpoint, with one minor difference. Both cards have a number of layers of plastic, and then they have an antenna or a coil of wire in them that is your antenna, and then they also have a chip. The difference between a smart card and a Prox card is the chip in a smart card is a microprocessor. Essentially, it's a mini computer on your card. So it can do more than store the ID number that a Prox card does. So both cards can store a number. And what does that number look like? Essentially, it's a series of ones and zeros that make up a number. The ones and zeros are composed typically of 3 sections, the first one being parity bits on either end of the number. And that's essentially to make sure that the data is correct in between the 2 parity bits. The facility code is kind of like the area code in your phone number. It tells you where you are. And then the badge ID is kind of like the rest of your phone number, and it tells you who you are, or in the case of the phone number, what house you are. So really the facility code tells you what facility you're in, and the badge ID tells you what user it is. So together, those things compose your user ID. and can be found both on a Prox card and can be put on a smart card for access control applications. 26-bit is the most common proximity format out there. Some of the other formats are 35-bit and 37-bit are probably two of the other most common proximity formats out there today. So let's talk a little bit more about proximity cards versus smart cards. So I mentioned earlier that they're constructed essentially the same way, but there were some differences between a Prox card and a smart card. The main differences are that a proximity card is what it is, and it stores a number, and that's all that it stores. A smart card has that chip on it, and so it also has the ability to store more information. So I've got the advantage of storage. The other thing is that we provide greater levels of security with a smart card. Because it can do more, it's even more important that it has greater security. So most smart cards you're going to run into are going to have greater security than any Prox card that you have. And I mentioned that they can do more. And up until recently, people are like, well, what more can it do? And some of the applications that you might use a smart card for, of course, is your physical access control. What about PC logon or logical access control? You can do things like storing a biometric template on your card, or do cashless vending for a hospital cafeteria so they can deduct it out of people's paychecks instead of making them carry cash around, or for a college cafeteria. You can use it for season football tickets. So I mentioned earlier that Prox cards don't have security. They openly communicate with the reader. Basically, it's like a license plate. The number is on the card, and anyone that has the ability to read it can read it. There's nothing secret about what's in this card. A smart card protects that data a little more securely. It has the number in the card, but before it'll share that information with the reader, it goes through a sequence of events that are encrypted that A, make sure that the card and the reader are allowed to talk to each other, and then B, make sure that that message is transmitted accurately. And all of that happens in an encrypted way so that that data is protected. And then that data is sent on to the access control panel. So what the access control panel sees from both devices is the same, but what happens on the front end is different. And that's where the security of smart cards really comes into play. There's a couple of terms that you should be aware of when it comes to smart cards and Prox cards. Obviously, smart and Prox we've been using not interchangeably, but throughout the day. But the other two things you'll hear are 125 kilohertz, which is proximity technology, and 13.56 megahertz, which is smart card technology. And those are just the frequencies at which those two technologies transmit data. Smart cards transmit data at a higher frequency because of that verification process that has to happen, that handshaking that has to happen. It needs to happen at a faster pace so that to the user, whether they use a Prox card or a smart card, there's no noticeable difference in the time that it takes them to use the device. And then Prox cards only have one-way communication. So it only gives information out, it doesn't take information. A smart card can give out information, and then you can also write information to a smart card. So that's one of the other advantages.